Hello, Saturnians. So, I have a few decks in my tarot deck collection that I can no longer connect with. So, today I thought I would show you a few decks that I don't vibe with anymore, and we will decide together whether I am going to keep these decks, repurpose these decks, or rehome these decks. Yes, let's do this. Okay, so the first deck that I want to show you is the Osho Zen Tarot. I've had this deck for a long time now, and this is the Brazilian version of this deck. Therefore, the cardstock is really bad. It's probably the worst cardstock I have in my collection. But there are a few cards that I really like in this deck. This is one of them. I absolutely love this black card. I wish all decks had a card symbolizing emptiness or the so called emptiness. And I really love this card. When it comes up in a reading, it makes sense. But look at this card stock, it is so cheap. It makes the whole deck look and feel cheaper than it actually is. So yeah, the card stock really, I don't know what to do about it. And there are a few cards that I love. I'm gonna show you the cards that I like. I love this one. I think it's really sweet. It's a beautiful symbol. I also like this one. This deck seems a bit not cohesive to me, because there are so many beautiful cards, but there are other cards that are absolutely hideous. I'm gonna show you next the cards that I don't like, but I want to show you first the cards that I like. I love this one because usually when we think about innocence, we think of children, but innocence is really a state of mind. So I like that there is an old man here instead of a child. I kind of like this one, but yeah, I love there are stars in their hair, but I don't really like this red heart. There are weird creatures kissing here. It's just weird to me, I don't know, but I like the card as a whole. I like that one too. You know, it's really beautiful. And this is probably another favorite of mine. I love the symbol behind it and the colors. I like that one too. Yeah, I like that one too also. You know, I like the symbol of the card. Yeah, this is a pretty one also. I love some of the colors. There are some cards that the colors are really beautiful, but then we have this. And this is hideous. It is just so ugly to me, unnecessarily ugly. And I know not all cards and not all decks are meant to be pretty. They're not all meant to be beautiful. I have some decks that I do not think they're pretty decks and I still love them. But this one, the aesthetics is just wrong for me. And it's preventing me from connecting with this deck. It's almost as if I like the concept behind, but I don't like the execution. Like, look at these ladies, they look crazy, and their arms is not proportional to their bodies. These tears, they're just so ugly. And yeah, I do not have another way of saying that the artwork or the art style the aesthetics of this deck does not resonate, and this is why I cannot connect. Like, I cannot explain why this causes me such repulsiveness, especially when there are other cards that I think are so beautiful. Look at this, it's so ugly. Yeah, and I know beauty is completely subjective. So when I say that, I mean it's ugly to me. Maybe it's beautiful for somebody else. But what I think is, because of the cards I like, I should keep this deck. I'm thinking that what I'm going to do is I am going to buy this deck in the original version that has different card stock, and I'll see if then I can connect with the deck, because there is a chance this is all because of the cardstock and it really looks cheap and uglier than it really is because of the cardstock. So I'll try to connect with a different version of this deck, and when I get a new version I will rehome this one. And then if I can't connect with a new version of this deck with better cardstock, then I'll just forget about it and rehome both of them. Yes, that's exactly what I'm gonna do here. So next, I want to show you the beginner's guide to tarot, but the Japanese version. Look at these cards. There are the Japanese names as well. And I bought this deck when I was in Japan. I didn't have any tarot deck with me, and I really needed to consult my cards. So I entered a bookstore and I literally bought like the first tarot deck that I saw, and it was this one with the Japanese names, which ended up being a good thing because I was learning Japanese, you see. And the interesting thing about this deck is that I find the artwork really meh. It's not like these cards, they seem a little lifeless to me. The artwork doesn't appeal to me. But I made a very strange connection with this deck because I was in Japan. I was in a very hostile environment. I was going through a very stressful situation and I needed a tarot deck with me. So I got this one. But from the beginning, every single time that I consulted these cards, I got this card, the Devil. But can you see it? It's misspelled. It's the Devil. And this ended up being a very important message to me because I was in a foreign country. I was trying to learn a different language. I was going through a lot of stress, and the deck kept giving me the one card that was misspelled again and again and again, and I thought that this was a sign. And yeah, I associated this misspelled devil with being lost in translation, you see? And that was the root of the whole trouble. But I have wonderful memories from Japan. I have wonderful memories from my trip to Japan. I just forever associated this deck with the stress that I was going through due to having to learn a new language in a very small period of time in order to complete a certain task. And only so that you know, I completed all the tasks, but it was stressful, I have to say it. And it's hard for me to undo this association, so I can no longer use this tarot deck for any other purpose. I cannot use it as a tarot deck. I cannot consult this deck about other matters because this devil was always and always will be about that one situation. So This is a deck that I cannot use, but in hindsight, like looking at this now, I think that I should keep it to remind me of that time in Japan, of the lessons I learned there. Yeah, I'm probably gonna keep this deck as not as a tarot deck. I don't think I can use it for anything else, but I'll keep this almost as a a piece of memory. Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep this one. And next, I want to show you the Thelema Tarot. And I actually used this deck a lot back in the days for client readings. I have many clients that love this deck. Somehow it gives me very accurate, clear readings. And I have wonderful memories of, walking around with this deck in my bag and asking random strangers to pick a card from my deck. And they would pick a card, I would tell them something, and they would be absolutely mesmerized by the messages that they got from this deck. I have a friend that she always asks me to do a reading for her using this deck because it gives her very accurate readings. But the thing is, after my collection started growing, this deck just became less interesting, less beautiful, less meaningful than other decks that I now have in my collection. So it no longer gives me those fantastic readings it used to give me. But look at this death card. I love it so much. So I thought about keeping this one, but I think that I should gift this deck to that one friend that always asks me to give her readings using this deck. I think it's gonna be very symbolic for her because now her problems are behind her. So this is like closing the gestalt, right? Yeah, I'm gonna give this to her. And this deck is going to be rehomed because now I have other decks that I find more interesting, more beautiful, and more meaningful to me. But she'll probably still get very accurate readings from this deck. So this is going to be rehomed. Yeah, it's the Thelema Tarot. Good times. And this is the Tarot of Dreams by Ciro Marchetti. And I think the backs are awesome. I love these backs. But if I'm honest, I used this deck so much. Back in the days, I used to take this deck everywhere with me. Even some cards are destroyed because I used it so much. So yeah, I don't even think I can rehome this deck because many of the cards are completely worn out. This is a deck that even though I used it so much, some of the cards, they're just too ugly. Look at this one. I love that snake, but that guy, wow. I mean, yeah, that's really ugly. So, I feel that my taste when it comes to decks has evolved throughout the years. And some of the decks that I used to think are beautiful are no longer beautiful to me when compared to other decks that I have now. There are quite a few things I like in this deck. The extra cards are really cool. Like, I always use the extra cards of this deck. I also love the fact that we can see the astrological correspondences in every single card because I think this adds an extra layer of interpretation. So maybe that's why I am still holding on to this deck. But again, if I am honest, I am no longer attracted to the style of these cards. This is not something that appeals to me aesthetically anymore. So when I compare this deck with other decks that I have in my collection now, I think it's quite ugly. But I still love the backs, and there are a few cards that I love. I like the cup suit in this deck. I think they're pretty. The court cards are also beautiful cards. Look at this High Priestess. I think she's interesting. Can you see what's in here? Darkness into darkness, the key to all mysteries. So yeah, I still think there are cards that are quite interesting. I also like the Strength card. But overall, this is a deck that is not aesthetically appealing to me. You see? I like the Seven of Swords though. Really like it. So yeah, I might repurpose this deck because I think the cards are too worn out for me to rehome this deck. And I like the backs, and I love this card, the Tree of Life card. And I think I could repurpose these cards and use it for a little art project. Let me know in the comments whether you want to see this project, and I'm gonna show you in my next video. And this is the beautiful Ostara Tarot. Now, I love the backs also. I think the backs are absolutely beautiful. I love the gilding. I love this silver. But I find this deck is a little weird. I'm gonna show you some cards that I really like first. I love this one. Look how adorable. I mean, there are some beautiful cards here. I love this Queen of Swords. But this deck has way too many problems for me. One of them is that, you have to figure out what suit it is, because here it's a 5. But unless you have a very trained eye, you would not know that this is the 5 of Wands. I know it's the 5 of Wands, but it doesn't say Wands anywhere. You see? So here is the 6 of Wands, but there is a girl with fish, so someone could confuse that with the 6 of Cups, maybe. And this is a gorgeous, gorgeous Emperor. I'm totally crushing on this Emperor. I love there is this Aries symbology in here. But this deck was a collaboration between 4 artists, and that's why it's not a cohesive deck at all. You can tell it was not created by the same person. Here we have the Tree of, it's even hard to tell what is the suit. But some of the cards are really cool. I just feel that I cannot use this deck as a tarot deck. When the cards are in a spread, it's hard to make sense of the cards because it lacks cohesiveness, you see. But it's still a beautiful deck, and I could use these as art cards. Here are a few cards that really annoy me. Here we have the Magician. There is no symbol here that specifically relates to the Magician. The Empress is the worst because she looks like she's stoned, like she's out of her body or something, like she's in trance. And the Empress is about being embodied, being connected to Earth. And for me, this card just doesn't communicate the message of the Empress at all. Here is the 2 of Wands, but this looks like the 8 of Swords to me. You see? I don't like the facial expressions in this deck. Many of the cards are a little emotionless to me. So I'm gonna show you another card that I really dislike. That's the Strength card. Because the Strength card is supposed to be fierce and powerful, and here this lady just looks bored, right? So I really don't understand the emotions in these cards. But yeah, I see this deck as art cards, not as a tarot deck. So I am on the fence about this. I don't know if I keep this deck or if I give it to somebody who will enjoy it and use it as a tarot deck. So I'll keep this in the maybe pile for now. Yeah, let me know in the comments, what would you do with this deck if you were me? Okay, so now I show you the Mystic Faery Tarot. And this is the Brazilian version. And the cardstock is surprisingly good for a Brazilian edition. The images are just beautiful, very gentle, very soft, very feminine, and yeah, it's a very pretty deck. However, having said all that, I never connected with this deck because the images, they are all too similar to each other. So I always have the feeling that I'm getting the same message again and again and again, even though I get different cards. And I've heard other people also complaining about this same thing. However, I feel that I'm not ready to let go of this deck because fairly recently I received the Chrysalis Tarot as a gift. And I'm gonna leave the link down below in the description box for you to watch the walkthrough of the Chrysalis Tarot. In that video, I pair these two decks, the Mystic Faery with the Chrysalis Tarot. And ever since I've been doing this, I have been getting deeper and more meaningful readings. I think I'm going to keep this for now because I am hoping to experiment by pairing it with other decks that I already have. You see, I think this is sometimes a good alternative when we cannot connect with a certain tarot deck. So I am keeping this deck for now because I'm excited to experiment with this deck. And yeah, if it doesn't work out, then I will probably rehome it because it's still quite new and I think somebody out there will enjoy this deck. But I think I'm going to keep it and I'll actually enjoy using this deck with other decks that I already have. So let's see what happens. But you know what? This is a deck that brings me joy, even when it doesn't give me super deep, profound messages. I just like to look at the cards while I am in my garden surrounded by my fairies with a cup of coffee in a beautiful morning. So yeah, I'm not ready to let go of my Mystic Faery Tarot. And this is the Witch's Tarot. And I love, love, love these backs. I cannot tell you how much I am in love with the backs of these cards. So I would probably keep this deck just because of the backs. And to be honest, there are quite a few cards that I still love in this deck, even though I feel that I'm no longer attracted to the artwork or the art style of these cards. But I kind of like this Hermit. This Queen of Wands is also very pretty. Look at her. There are elements here and there in each card that I like. I actually like the wand suit very much, but if I compare this deck with other decks that I already have, this deck becomes just less interesting and less beautiful. Some of the cards, I don't know, the ladies, they look like supermodels, and this is something that I dislike in a deck. Some images look like photos, and I also dislike this in a deck. So, yeah, it's really a matter of not being attracted to this style. So I guess I am going to repurpose this deck. I am going to use the cards that I love, use the backs in my art project. And this is a way of still using and still enjoying a deck that I cannot connect with, you see. So maybe this is more meaningful than having a deck collecting dust on my tarot shelf, you see. Yeah, I do like the one suit though. This Ace of Wands is beautiful with the butterfly and the beautiful sky in the background. The Chariot. Nine of Swords. Okay, so yeah, I'll repurpose this. It's no longer be a tarot deck. Instead, it's going to become a little piece of art. Yep, sounds good to me. And this is the Mythic Tarot. I don't even have the box anymore. This is the Brazilian version of the Mythic Tarot. Therefore, as you can see, it's in Portuguese. And I use this deck a lot. I actually really like this deck. It gives me crystal clear readings. I use it a lot for client readings, but again, look at the cardstock. Because it's the Brazilian edition, the cardstock is the worst. And yeah, I still hold on to this deck because it gives me crystal clear readings, as I said. I love to use it for client readings. It's very accurate and on point. I love the illustrations. Cardstock is bad, but my good friend Pamona is sending me the new Mythic Tarot, which is the same deck, but the new version of it. And since it's not the Brazilian edition, the cardstock is going to be much better. So I will probably rehome this one and keep the other one that she's sending me because the cardstock is gonna be so much better. There is a little problem though, is that when I compare the illustrations of the new Mythic Tarot with the original Mythic Tarot, I actually like these illustrations better. So I will wait until I receive the new Mythic Tarot to see if I prefer that one. I prefer to keep that one. But in case I prefer to keep that one, I will let this one go and I'm going to rehome this because I really don't need two editions of the same deck or two versions of the same deck unless they are completely different. Now, I do not have any backups. I do have different editions or different versions of the same deck, but I only keep them if they are different enough to justify me having both versions. Otherwise, I usually rehome one of them. So I am thinking that I am going to let this go and I'll keep the new Mythic Tarot unless the illustrations are really, really different. I watched a few comparisons and I think the differences are, minimal. I still think the illustrations of the original are more beautiful, but I'll have to touch the cards and see them with my physical eyes to make a decision about that. So Pamona, if you're watching that, thank you so much for sending me the new Mythic Tarot. By the way, Pamona is sending me that deck because she couldn't connect with it. So yeah, I'm gonna show you guys once I receive the decks that Pamona is sending me. So, if you watched to the end, thank you so much for being here. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're coming back, thank you so much. You are the best. So I'll see you next time. Bye bye.